It is NFL Draft Week. Yes, here we are, the Kansas City Chiefs and 31 other teams. Gonna have a very busy weekend indeed. Welcome into the Chiefs Zone Podcast. I am Farzin Vasugian, your host. Appreciate you guys downloading and listening to the podcast. And for those of you watching and listening live on Facebook and YouTube, appreciate you guys as well on this Tuesday night. Got a lot of live streams and content for you guys coming your way this week. Obviously, we will be covering the NFL draft, just commenting on it, reacting, all kinds of stuff this weekend. And if you want an in-depth reaction to every single Chiefs draft pick, keep it locked here on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever it is you watch and listen to the reels, because we'll have extensive breakdowns of the Chiefs draft picks, all of them. I would say all 7 of them or 8 of them, however many the Chiefs have. I think it's 8. But we will definitely react to all of them. Obviously, that can change with trades and whatnot, and it is worth noting that the Chiefs are kind of rumored to be in the middle of a trade right now. So we'll get into that, get into some of the other rumors that are going on out there, and who could the Chiefs get? Whether it's at 31 or trading up, is there a possibility of the Chiefs trading out of the first round? I'll touch on that and give my thoughts on all of that, and also Wrestlemania took place this weekend in Las Vegas. Could Kansas City ever host a Wrestlemania? Obviously, with the stadium talks going on right now, depending on what decision they make, could be a reality. I'll tell you why later on in the podcast. Thank you all for watching and listening live. Tune in. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts on anything I'm talking about. Feel free to react and let's chat it up here. Want to let you know this podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. And I'll tell you what, this weekend in Kansas City is the TKO takeover finally taking place this weekend at T-Mobile Center, starting Thursday night with PBR. That'll take place then Thursday night, and then 2 days later, Saturday night, is going to be UFC Fight Night, and then 2 nights after that, it will be WWE Raw in Kansas City. I'm excited for that one. I'll be there, and I know a lot of you guys will be there also. And if you guys want to catch any of the action, you guys can go to SeatGeek.com, get your tickets from there, and save $20 off when you use my promo code Farzine if you're a new SeatGeek customer. Go to SeatGeek.com, get your tickets, and at checkout, new customers can put in my promo code Farzine to save $20 off their first order from SeatGeek. All right, I see you guys coming in. Appreciate you guys joining me on this Tuesday night. By the way, I mentioned that we'll be doing live streams as soon as the Chiefs make their pick in round 1, or if they trade out of the first round, we will immediately go live and react to Kansas City's draft decision Thursday night. So make sure you guys keep it locked right here on the Facebook and YouTube pages, and we'll react to Kansas City's first round decision. Hopefully it's a first round draft pick we can react to. So make sure you guys come back here once the draft pick or the decision has been made for the Chiefs Thursday night. Also, one other thing I forgot to mention. Can't say who it is yet. We're at the 1 yard line. Just have to make final confirmation here, but we do have a very special guest joining the podcast tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central Time. Can't say who it is just yet because we have not pinned down a date and time just yet. But we've been, let's just say there have been some good back and forth communication about making this happen. In fact, this guy actually was a fan favorite during his time in Kansas City. So I know you guys will be very excited when you guys find out who it is. Can't say who it is, but feel free to guess in the comments as to who it might be. But let me know who you guys think it'll be. Hopefully you guys enjoy it nonetheless. We're expecting that to happen tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Central Time. So keep it locked here. And you'll find out who it is. Maybe I might announce it tonight. Who knows? All right, let's get into the NFL draft here as the Kansas City Chiefs, they are picking number 31 this year, and they do have 8 draft selections this year. They're picking number 31 in the first round. In the second round, they're picking 63rd. And then because of the L'Jarius Sneed trade, the Chiefs are going to pick almost right after the 63rd pick. They'll be picking 66th. That is going to be the second pick of the third round. They also have the 95th pick of round 3. And then on day 3 of the draft, the Chiefs will have the 133rd pick and round 4. Then they will not have a draft pick until the 7th round. They'll be picking at 226. And then as far as compensatory picks goes, the Chiefs have the 251st pick and also the final pick, the 257th pick, Mr. Irrelevant. The last time the Chiefs drafted Mr. Irrelevant was back in 2009. It was Ryan Suckup. So that ended up being a pretty good pick for Kansas City that year. I think the only good pick for Kansas City that year that I think back. Who was it? Tyson Jackson, Alex McGee? Yeah, not a good bet. That was the first draft class in the Todd Haley, Scott Pioli regime. Oh, how fun was that? That was quite a joy. But thankfully, the Chiefs have come a very long way since then. And when you're looking at Kansas City right now, obviously the priority is offensive line here. And I think there's some emphasis on the defensive line as well. When you're looking at what the Chiefs might be able to do here, because, I mean, a guy like Armand Membo from Mizzou, likely going to be a top 10 pick. And if he's not top 10, should be top 15. But he's expected to go very early. Will Campbell from LSU, probably going to be a top 10 or a top 15 pick. So who does that leave you with? You've got Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas. You've got Josh Simmons from Ohio State. You have Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon. I think prior to free agency starting up and before the Jalen Moore signing that the Chiefs made, I think a lot of people thought that Josh Connerly Jr. might have been a realistic possibility of landing in Kansas City. But those are the 5 names that are expected to go as far as offensive tackles go. Those are the 5 names expected to go in the first round of the NFL draft. And could the Chiefs be one of those teams that gets involved? I'm seeing a lot of people say that the Chiefs might trade up to get Kelvin Banks Jr. somewhere in the early 20s. And then I've seen some mock drafts say that Josh Simmons will fall to the Chiefs at 31. I don't think either Banks Jr. or Josh Simmons will be available at 31. If you really want one of those players, you're going to have to trade up to get them. Now, I will say Matt Miller of ESPN, he put out a report last week stating that the Chiefs do have some serious interest in trading up for an offensive tackle. I find it difficult to believe that they would be trading up for Will Campbell or Armand Membo, because if you're going to try to get one of those guys, you would have to give up a lot, because those guys are probably gone in the top 10 or by the 15th pick or 60 halfway through the first round. So I don't think it's going to be for either of those two players. Let's say they're not worth it. I mean, they're going to go very early. I just think Kansas City would have to really give up a lot to move up potentially 20 spots we might be talking about, give or take, to try to get one of those two guys. So I don't think it's going to be for Campbell or Membo. I think there's serious interest from the Chiefs in Kelvin Banks Jr., and if he's not available, Josh Simmons. Could the Chiefs try to trade up with both those guys on the board just so they have that option? Sure, that certainly would make a lot of sense. That way you can have both of your options there. I kind of wonder if the Chiefs would let one of those guys go between Banks and Simmons, because like I said, Membo and Campbell are going to go very early. But let's say Kelvin Banks Jr. goes after those two. I think that is when Brett Veach might pull the trigger and try very aggressively to make a trade up so he can secure Josh Simmons. I mean, let's say Kelvin Banks Jr. goes somewhere 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, somewhere around there, because you still have a few more picks left before you get to Kansas City at that point. And I think that is when Brett Veach would seriously consider trading up to be able to secure a guy like Josh Simmons. Because I don't think Simmons would be available at 31. I don't. I know a lot of people feel like this is a deep offensive line class, especially with the offensive tackles here. But I think that, you can't ever, if there's someone you really like, might need to trade up to get them. Obviously, the Chiefs have traded up in recent years. In the first round, obviously, traded up to get Patrick Mahomes, traded up last year to get to get Xavier Worthy. A couple of years ago, they traded up to get Trent McDuffie, and later on, with their other first-round pick, ended up getting George Karlaftis. That was a very busy first round for Kansas City that night. I'm just kind of looking at big picture here because I would imagine the two offensive tackles the Chiefs have serious interest in, with a realistic shot of getting them, would be Kelvin Banks Jr. and Josh Simmons. My guess is you might need to move up 10 to 15 spots to try to get one of those guys. So what would something cost to try to move up 10 to 15 spots? Well, I read you some of the draft picks all of the draft picks the Chiefs have: 31, 63, 66, and 95. Those are the 4 picks they have in the first 2 days. If they want to move up 10 to 15 spots in the first round, obviously there would be a first round swap there. So they'd give up their 31st pick. I would imagine the Chiefs have to give up the number 66 pick if they want to move up 10 to 15 spots to be able to get Kelvin Banks Jr. or Josh Simmons. I don't think a team would settle for the 95th pick, because then that's pretty damn close to day 3 of the NFL draft from round 4 is what I meant to say. I just don't think a team would be willing to settle for the 95th pick unless Kansas City's willing to throw in an additional draft pick there. And at that point, I think you might be giving up too much, listen, there's no such thing as too much if you really do believe in one of these guys here, whether it's Kelvin Banks or Josh Simmons. Because here's the thing for Kansas City: if they're going to get an offensive tackle, fine. I'm not writing that off completely, even though they signed Josh Simmons. And Andy Reid said earlier this week that Kingsley Suamataia is going to compete for the starting left guard spot. I would imagine Mike Caliendo is one of the candidates for that job. Maybe a draft pick if they get an offensive guard here, like a Gray Zabel. I saw Tim Grunhard give a nice ringing endorsement for Gray Zabel. He even said that he reminds him of his teammate Dave Zott. Which, by the way, I mentioned Dave Zott, a guy who I think should be in the Chiefs Hall of Fame. Gwen says Buffalo will engage with us again. Yeah, Buffalo seems to like to trade with Kansas City. But Buffalo, what's Buffalo picking? They're not picking too early shortly before Kansas City, right? Yeah, Buffalo's picking 30th. So would be nice, but not happening this year. By the way, and not to lose track of what I'm about to say, but I mentioned Dave Zott in the Chiefs Hall of Fame. I've said for a while, I have a list of guys who the Chiefs should put in the Hall of Fame. The Chiefs should be announcing their next member of the Ring of Honor very soon, but they haven't done that yet. Usually they do it the weekend before the NFL draft. So this past weekend, we never got an official announcement from the Kansas City Chiefs. So I kind of wonder, that could be coming within the next 24 to 48 hours, I would imagine. It's got to happen very soon. So just have to get that out there. And as far as the first round goes, this is a pretty big surprise here. I did not realize this until, and I can't recall who I heard this from first. There has not been one single trade made with a first round draft pick this year. I don't recall, because usually you see some teams coming into a draft and they have multiple first round picks. Not this year, at least as of Tuesday night. Yeah, not yet. All 32 teams have a first round draft pick right now. Could that change? Yes, absolutely could change. But I think right now it is kind of interesting that all 32 teams have a first round pick. How does that pan out in terms of trades, and like a team like the Minnesota Vikings, unless you're willing to give up a lot of draft picks in later rounds, they're probably not willing to trade out of the first round because they only have 4 draft picks this year. So that number 1 pick for them, the 24th pick, is going to be pretty vital for them in making sure they have the right player that they want at 24, whoever that could be. Maybe they trade up as well. Would cost quite a lot considering they don't have much, but there's always the possibility of trading down too. I kind of wonder with trading up, is there any realistic scenario where the Chiefs could trade up and keep their 31st pick? I think there is. If you are willing to give up the 63rd and the 66th pick, Kansas City might be able to move up a few spots. Maybe in the give or take somewhere in the 20s. I mean, obviously it would not be specifically 20 because that's where Denver's picking. It's not common for teams to trade within their division even during the draft. I mean, we see it sometimes, but it's very, very rare still. But you sure as hell don't see it in the first round. That's for sure. As far as offensive guards go, I mentioned Gray Zabel. That's an offensive lineman I really like. I know the big knock on him is that he played at North Dakota State. Can't really control that kind of thing, but when you have a lot of scouts praising him and basically endorsing this guy that he could be a very good offensive lineman in the NFL, and I know they don't get it right every single time. You can't expect every single all 257 picks to become Hall of Famers. I mean, that's just not the reality. Some are going to be busts, and some are going to be surprises in later rounds. But Gray Zabel is a guy that's getting a lot of praise coming into this draft with his versatility, his ability to play so many different spots on the offensive line. Played a lot of left tackle, some right tackle, left guard when he was at North Dakota State. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, someone that they could get in the second round. I don't think they would be going after a center considering they have Creed Humphrey, and I know they really like Hunter Norzad there. Could the Chiefs go defense in the first round? I certainly can't write that possibility off with a guy like Walter Nolan. I don't think Walter Nolan would be available at 31. Derek Harmon seems to be the very popular pick at 31 if the Chiefs decide to go defense. The defensive tackle out of Oregon, foregoing his senior year, he's expected to go in the first round. Kenneth Grant's another guy kind of in that mix there. Darius Alexander, Tyleik Williams. In the second round, if the Chiefs want to go offense in the first round, get a defensive tackle in the second round, a guy like Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee would certainly be a good pick for them as well. But I think it's very likely the Chiefs will get either an offensive tackle, an offensive guard, or a defensive tackle. I think that's where Kansas City will go in the first round. Now, I will say this because this name, and it's a name that a lot of you guys are very familiar with, I've seen this player go all over the board on mock drafts. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen to this player specifically. I think that this is a player that should go in the top 10, but is probably going to drop. I've seen this guy projected to go from top 10, top half of the first round, all the way into the second round. There's been a lot of interesting projections on this guy, and I'm referring to wide receiver Luther Burden out of Mizzou. Obviously, if you're a Mizzou fan, you know a lot about Luther Burden and just what he's capable of, how successful he is. Could Luther Burden fall to Kansas City at 31? According to some mock drafts out there, yes. Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. If you ever play around with Pro Football Focus's mock draft simulator, and if you play with it enough times, you do get Luther Burden available at 31 quite a bit. Now they mix it up a little bit from every time you do a new mock draft. So at times he's not there at 31, but more times than not, he is available. And that is kind of interesting. I actually had one mock draft simulator where Luther Burden, Kelvin Banks Jr. and Josh Simmons were all available at 31. I don't think that's possible. I really don't. I'd be shocked if all three were available at 31. I would have a lot of questions. Why aren't those guys being taken? Because there are a lot of teams out there that, they're looking for offensive tackles in this draft. So I would expect after Membo and after who's the other player? Will Campbell. I think you're going to start to see some offensive tackles go one or two in the teens, maybe one more in the 20s. And then by the time Kansas City picks, I would imagine they take an offensive tackle. But if Luther Burden's available at 31, do you take him if you're Kansas City? It's really hard to say no. And yes, they do have Rashee Rice pending suspension, which, by the way, I don't think the suspension is going to be as hefty as some people think it'll be. I really don't. I know there are a lot of Chiefs haters out there hoping for a half-season suspension. I think those people are in for a rude awakening when they see that number. But I'll say this now. Rashee Rice pending a suspension, Xavier Worthy coming back, Hollywood Brown coming back, Juju Smith-Schuster is back. I don't think you need Luther Burden, but it sure as hell would not hurt. Like, it would do a lot for Patrick Mahomes. You're going to have a pretty big problem at the left side of your offensive line if you don't get an offensive tackle. I don't know what kind of a guard Kingsley Suamataia is gonna be. He looked okay in that Denver game, but one game too small of a sample size. I suppose we'll see a lot more of Kingsley Suamataia at left guard in OTAs and training camp and in the preseason. Certainly, a lot of opinions will be formed about him then. But I just don't know right this moment if the Chiefs take a wide receiver. Not that Luther Burden's not worth it. He absolutely is. But I think Kansas City has far more pressing matters than trying to add to a crowded wide receiver room, which would have been hard to imagine 2 years ago. Because I think at that point, you've got to focus on the line of scrimmage. You want to go offense? Well, protect Patrick Mahomes. You want to go defense? Fine. Go get a defensive tackle or an edge rusher that can make a difference and help add to your defense, because the defense does have some room for improvement, especially when it comes to collecting their sack totals. A lot of pressures, which, pressures are nice, but they're also considered almost sacks. And if those pressures don't lead to ill-advised throws, and the Chiefs, unfortunately, had a lot of situations where they got pressured to the quarterback, but at the very last second, a lot of quarterbacks were able to find open receivers. Kansas City needs to close in and bring an end to these drives at the line of scrimmage, or behind the line of scrimmage, rather. If Derek Harmon is there, if one of the two offensive tackles, Kelvin Banks Jr. or Josh Simmons, and Luther Burden, if you have all of those players available, and again, I would be surprised if you do, I would imagine one of those four, that being Harmon, Burden, Kelvin Banks Jr., and Josh Simmons. I would imagine one, maybe two of those four would be available at 31. What do you do then? I think Kansas City would need to focus on protecting Patrick Mahomes more than anything else. That's where the priority is right now if you're Kansas City. As far as other possibilities in later rounds of the draft, I want to look at the running back position, because Brett Veach did a press conference earlier this week and mentioned that this is a very deep running back class, and thinks that there could be some really good quality players taken in the first 5 rounds, and hinted that Kansas City would certainly like to get a piece of the pie there and get one of those running backs here. I mean, a guy like Ashton Jeanty certainly going early. Omari and Hampton going to go fairly early also. This is where it gets kind of interesting here, because I think the running back position has kind of reinvented itself in the last 2 years, especially this past year with what we saw from the Philadelphia Eagles and Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, switching teams and having a phenomenal season. Could we see more running backs get taken in the first round? Could a guy like Travion Henderson from Ohio State go in the first 15 or 16 picks or be taken in the first round? Because I've seen some people project him going to Kansas City. I've said many times, I do think Kansas City needs to get a more reliable running back. Now, they're going to get Isaiah Pacheco back. They re-signed Kareem Hunt. They got Elijah Mitchell. They still have Carson Steele on the team. I don't think they're going to go running back with the first round. I do think with the 90, or I'm sorry, what pick is it? The 66th pick? Very early in the third round, the second pick of the third round. I think Kansas City has to consider a running back with that pick right there. Who are your options? Potentially Caleb Johnson. If he doesn't go early, if you really like Caleb Johnson, you would maybe have to pick him at 63 and maybe even trade up a little bit to try to secure him. Dylan Sampson from Tennessee certainly would be a very good option, as would Kunchun Judkins from Ohio State. Cam Scatterbo, I know, is a very popular one, especially with the way he performed for Arizona State in the college football playoff game against Texas. But I don't think he'll be available at 63. I think he'll be gone by then. A really popular name locally is Devin Neal, the first Jayhawk ever to rush for 1,000 yards 3 consecutive years. And this is considering a school that once had a guy by the name of Gale Sayers. You also have another local guy, DJ Giddens, who I think is kind of an underrated prospect going into the draft. You also have RJ Harvey from UCF. There are a lot of really good local, like guys who either have a Big 12 tie or from the state of Kansas, not too far from Kansas City, like a Caleb Johnson. A couple of Ohio State guys on that list there. There are some very interesting names as far as running backs go that could be available by the time the Chiefs pick at 66 and also 63 and 66. Like I think Sampson from Tennessee, Devin Neal from KU, DJ Giddens from K-State, RJ Harvey. I think they'll all be available at 66. Who would be available at 95? That becomes the big concern there. Because I think whoever you take at 66 or 95, they'll be part of that depth chart, which I don't think there's a clear-cut number one running back on the team, though I wonder if Kareem Hunt could maybe could take those reins, because let's not forget, he was a really good running back his first stint in Kansas City. Obviously, time has passed and all of that, and over time we've seen that that's not a legitimate outlet. Why would Pacheco? Hold on, who is reporting that? Let me check this out while. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Eric Bieniemy's there. I mean, that seems like speculation more than anything else. Yeah, I don't know he's coming off an injury. So unless Eric Bieniemy is really, and I know the front office also has some Casey connections there, I don't think that's a possibility. But what I will say about the running back position is I think Kareem Hunt, if he has a full off season, which he has right now, going through OTAs, going through training camp and the preseason, which he did not have the luxury of doing last year, I think that can make a difference for Kareem Hunt. I really do. So if Kareem Hunt can go through all of that with the Chiefs this offseason, it would certainly help not just Kansas City, but also Kareem Hunt himself and be able to play more snaps, offensively speaking. But I think Kansas City would still need to consider a running back, kind of like when Alex Smith was the starting quarterback here and Patrick Mahomes, his rookie year, was the backup. If you have a rookie running back that's kind of behind Pacheco and Hunt, I certainly think it would really help out because depending on what happens in 2025 and after and the offseason following, which I know is a long ways away, but that rookie running back, whether it's Cam Scatabo, Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, Trevion Henderson, I mean, I'd be thrilled with any of those players. I think they would really play a lot more in 2026 compared to 2025. So it just kind of depends how early does Kansas City want to go for a running back here. That's the big question mark for me in terms of what Kansas City might do. As far as later rounds, the diamond in the rough type of picks, and Kansas City, we know they've been able to find some great players in later rounds over the years, not just with this regime, but in other regimes in previous years. One player that I'd be really curious to see if the Chiefs go after at the offensive guard position would be Tate Ratledge from Georgia. I really like him. I think that's someone that might be available with the 95th pick late in the third round. Kyle Williams is an interesting name at wide receiver that the Chiefs could add for depth purposes with the 133rd pick in the fourth round. Here's a very interesting name. In the mock draft simulator that PFF had, Ty Robinson is available in the seventh round in a lot of these mock drafts. I think Ty Robinson could go a little earlier, fourth or fifth round. If Kansas City gets, a guy like Derek Harmon or Omar Norman Lott, if they were to get either of those defensive tackles in the first or second round, maybe a Walter Nolan. I saw that in the chat. And if they were to get a Ty Robinson a little later in the draft, I would really love that for Kansas City's defensive line depth. I mean, that'd be really good to beef that position up right beside Chris Jones. Because when you look at the Chiefs' defensive tackle spot right now, you have Chris Jones, you have Mike Pennell. Mike Pennell, I think, is certainly serviceable and above average, but he is up there in age. Who do you have behind those two guys? You have Marlon Tuipulotu. You have Jerry Tillery, who you brought in from Minnesota. Fabian Lovett Sr., Sakai Ika. I mean, the depth is very thin. There aren't a lot of great options behind Chris Jones. And I think if the Chiefs were to get two defensive tackles in this draft, again, in the first round, could be Walter Nolan, could be Derek Harmon. In the second round, Omar Norman Lott, maybe a TJ Sanders, maybe a Tyleek Williams. I think that'd be a good start for the defensive line in this draft. And I think later on, if you were to get a guy like Ty Robinson, and the Chiefs don't have a fifth round or a sixth round pick, so they might need to figure out a trade of some sort if they really wanted to get Ty Robinson. I think that'd be great for Kansas City's defensive line. I really do. So that's one name I would be very interested in seeing if Kansas City were to target him and where Ty Robinson could go in this draft, because I don't think he's a seventh round pick. I think he's someone who could be taken much sooner than the seventh round. Who's the best running back? I mean, it's hard to find anyone outside of Ashton Genty with the type of season he had. Almost had the single season rushing record, if I'm not mistaken. Him and Saquon Barkley. Almost. Other potential diamond in the roughs drafts here. I mentioned RJ Harvey. He had the fourth best 40 time among running backs in the NFL draft. You have Bashal Tutin from Virginia Tech. He had a 4.32 40 time. That's pretty good. Jalen Blue from Texas ran a 4.38. As far as wide receivers, and some of the fastest wide receivers from this draft class, judging off 40 time, Matthew Golden had a 4.29 40 time, the fastest among wide receivers and running backs. Dante Thornton from Tennessee ran a 4.3. Shamar Duke from Florida ran a 4.34. Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech also ran a 4.34. So those are some interesting names there Arian Smith from Georgia, 4.36. I mean, Matthew Golden's expected to go very early, but in general, I know Jalen Royals is all from Utah State is another interesting under the radar name at the wide receiver position here. But a lot of those names I mentioned outside of Matthew Golden, those are not guys that are expected to be taken in the first 2 days of the draft. Now, again, those are mock drafts and scouting reports, so things can always change. Teams don't view these prospects the same way we do. So it could be very different come draft time, for sure. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to see of those wide receivers and running backs that ran those fast 40 times. Who could the Chiefs get? Because a guy like RJ Harvey, who I mentioned earlier among the running back group, that'd be a very interesting name for sure, especially with his speed. We know Andy Reid and the Chiefs, they love to bring in speed to Kansas City. There's a reason they went and got Kadarius Toney, and it didn't work out at the end of the day. But boy, was it worth it? Yeah, Kadarius, you don't win Super Bowl 57 without Kadarius Toney. I mean, there were a lot of people who had a big hand in Super Bowl 57, and Kadarius Toney, regardless what your opinion of him is now, he's a big reason for the Chiefs winning Super Bowl 57. Obviously, we know what the Chiefs did with Tyreek Hill over the years. Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and not a draft pick, but a free agent who they brought in. The Chiefs love to get fast players. Isaiah Pacheco was tied for the fastest 40 time in the 2022 draft class, and the Chiefs got him almost undrafted. So the Chiefs always have a keen eye for these players that show out in their 40 times and always do really well in college football, showcasing their speed here. So some of those names I mentioned I'd be very interested to see if the Chiefs were to get any of those players in later rounds of the draft among the running back and the wide receiver positions. So those are my thoughts on the NFL draft, specifically for the Chiefs. As we get closer to the NFL draft, we are less than 48 hours away, give or take 48 hours away from day one of the draft. Yeah, appreciate you, Chris. Appreciate it. Thank you. Jim says, let's beef up the O-line so Pat can get some decent pass protection. Yeah, that is the goal of this offseason. You got Jalen Moore. You weren't able to get Cam Robinson, or not Cam Robinson. Who am I thinking of? The Ravens offensive tackle that they re-signed. I can't think of his name right now. Ronnie Stanley. Yeah, you weren't able to get Ronnie Stanley. I think a big reason why you traded Joe Thuney was so you could get a guy like Ronnie Stanley. I mentioned Joe Thuney moving on, and Andy Reid commented on that earlier this week as well. I mean, that's a pretty big loss right there. It was one that had to happen, understandably so, but makes sense with the whole salary cap situation. So what could Kansas City do? Well, they got Jalen Moore. They feel pretty good about him. Could they add more? They're moving Kingsley Suamataia from tackle to guard. Obviously, they have some optimism that he could work out better as a guard than a tackle after, if we're just being completely upfront, transparent, and honest here, really an abysmal season. Couldn't even finish the first two games. I mean, the second week they pulled him, and he came back later in the year when Wanya Morris got hurt, and he still was struggling. Didn't learn anything. That's the other thing with Kansas City is that offensive tackle position they have not gotten right over the years. Ever since they cut Eric Fisher, who have they brought in? They traded for Orlando Brown. Didn't work out. He was terrible. They go and get Donovan Smith. Okay, he had some success in the past, but not much with Kansas City. I thought he played a little better in the playoffs, but just a little bit. They draft Wanya Morris. Doesn't really work out. They draft Kingsley Suamataia. Doesn't work out. They go and sign DJ Humphries off the street. Doesn't work. I mean, the Chiefs have tried anything and everything. Their best offensive tackle since Eric Fisher was Joe Thuney, and that's not ideal. And I thought Joe Thuney played just fine in the regular season, but I think he took a big step back in the playoffs, which was a surprise to me because he faced Daniil Hunter in the regular season, faced him less than a month later in the playoffs, and it was just a completely different ball game for Joe Thuney there. So they're looking for that viable and consistent left tackle there. Could it be Jalen Moore? And maybe they don't even get an offensive lineman and go defense instead to try to get a guy like Walter Nolan or Derek Armin, Kenneth Grant, one of those guys in the first round. That's a possibility. It depends on how optimistic they feel about that offensive line. Brett Veach did say the goal is to, put an emphasis on the offensive and defensive line there. Could that be a smokescreen? Sure. Who knows? But that is something he brought up there. Joey's asking who's the offensive line coach. It's Andy Heck. Who's done a great job with his interior offensive line, but it's the offensive tackles that just have not been very good. I'll say this about Jawan Taylor. I mean, he commits a lot of penalties. Okay, penalties aside, which you can't really put it aside because that's a big part of the sport there. But as far as his pass blocking abilities go, Jawan Taylor just has these weird moments where some games he looks like the worst offensive tackle in the league. And then other games, he actually can hold his own and not allow an edge rusher to get through in 2 seconds. Jim says, I hope letting Thuney go isn't a mistake. Yeah, unfortunately, your hands were kind of tied there. Jim also says, I'm really hoping we get either Devin Neal or one of those Buckeyes running backs. Yeah, they've got a couple. I don't know if Travion Henderson the Chiefs would take in the first round. And if he doesn't go at 31, I think he goes early in the second. There's certainly the possibility of getting a guy like Judkins. I like Dylan Sampson. I like Cam Scatabo. I think Scatabo is going to go early in the second round. But yeah, I would love to see Devin Neal in Kansas City. That'd be huge for Kansas City's offense. Yeah, I certainly agree with you. Samuel's asking, how many quarterbacks do you think go in the first round? I think that only Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and Jackson Dart go early. Charles Davis had a very, and I like Charles Davis. I know I laughed there. I mean, I'm not, he's in my opinion, one of the better analysts out there. On his mock draft, he had, and maybe his mock draft has changed over the offseason. I don't know, because everyone's mock draft changes. But he has Cam Ward number 1 to Tennessee, Shedeur Sanders number 2 to Cleveland, and he has Jackson Dart going number 3 to Cleveland, or to New York, to the Giants. Listen, I'll be honest. I for obvious reasons, I have not focused on the quarterback position very much. Jackson Dart's his name has kind of been getting hyped a little bit more lately. Shedeur Sanders was a really interesting one where it sounded like he was going to fall out of the first round. But I don't know. I feel like as we get closer and closer to the draft, there seems to be a lot of value for Sanders and Dart. I don't know if Dart goes in the first round, but it sounds like it sounds like there's more attention surrounding him this week and last week. Shedeur Sanders, I think some teams are just coming to the conclusion that he's a guy that's worth taking in the first round. So I think Cam Ward goes to Tennessee. What does Cleveland do? I mean, that team's a fucking mess. You got to do it. You got to go. You got to go get Sanders. I don't think the Giants get a quarterback. New England just drafted one last year in Drake May. Jacksonville. I mean, listen, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a bad quarterback, but he is not living up to that. What was the phrase used for him? Once in a generation quarterback. Yeah, he's not living up to that standard. The Raiders, they just got Geno Smith, and they signed him to an extension, which doesn't mean anything because they signed not Jimmy Garoppolo. Who was it? Or maybe it was Jimmy Garoppolo. They signed him to a 3-year deal. So who knows? The Jets. Yeah, I don't know. The Saints, given the news recently with Derek Carr, Jackson Dart could go there. That's a possibility, but I don't know where Jackson Dart goes. If I had to bet money on it, I could give a safe bet that Ward and Sanders are first-round picks. Jackson Dart, I don't know. Jalen Milroe's name has gotten more appreciation lately as well. I don't think he goes in the first round, though. I can see Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe going in the second round. Dart goes before Sanders, you think? I don't know. Oh, boy, that Dion is going to lose his mind if that happens. I think Tony will drop his rapping career like he dropped those balls. Hey, is Travis Hunter really finished, or do you think he'll actually play in the? No. Listen, Travis Hunter, that dude is immensely talented. I mean, look at Major League Baseball right now. We have a guy that can pitch and bat very well at both positions. Listen, I don't know what they're feeding kids these days, what they're putting in their cereal and all that stuff, but you're seeing a lot more kids now. And not to say there weren't multi-sport athletes in high school in years past, 20, 30 years ago, but I think there is just a more bigger emphasis on it now. Athletes today, they see the crazy things that other professional, I'm talking high school athletes, they see what college and high school pro athletes do today. And I just kind of wonder if high school athletes today just get motivated by that kind of thing. And they're like, oh, I can do better than that. And they kind of just push themselves beyond their limits. I don't know. The thing about the NFL is you always talk about, let's just say, because he can play wide receiver and quarterback. Let's just say he plays cornerback. Because there's always this thing about trying to get your defense off the field, especially after a long drive. After a long drive, do you really think he can go out there with his speed and run all these big routes? I don't know, man. I just don't know. Charvarius Ward was on Kay Adams' show last offseason, and the topic of the overtime coin toss came up because the 49ers elected to receive, which shocked everybody. If you watch the NFL Films recap of that, the refs were mic'd up, and they're like, bro, they wanted it. And Patrick Mahomes goes to the sidelines. He's like, yeah, they wanted it. So we're bummed out we lost the coin toss, but they wanted it. And Charvarius Ward tried to justify the decision, and he said something to the effect of how the defense at the end of regulation, right before the end of regulation, just gave up that long drive. It was a great drive by Kansas City, just didn't have enough time to try to punch it in for a touchdown. Which didn't matter because they ended up giving up the game-winning touchdown drive in overtime when the Chiefs got the ball second. But anyway, my point in bringing that up is Charvarius Ward, he justified it by saying that the defense was really tired on the final drive of regulation and they really needed a break there. And I get it. That's the final game of the season that's going into overtime, and you're definitely tired by that point. My whole point with Travis Hunter, yeah, Bo Jackson for sure. My whole thing with Travis Hunter is, can you play at not just at a high level? I know he can play both positions at a high level, but can you do it consistently? I mean, like, I don't care if you're the best athlete in this draft class, which Travis Hunter probably is. Stamina gets to everybody. I make a big deal about time of possession with you guys whenever we react to Chiefs games. So I don't know. Him threatening to not play in the NFL, okay, that's a bunch of bullshit. Who's a guy that's going to go in the top 5 is going to really sacrifice his NFL career if he doesn't have it his way? Like, come on. No, he's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. But yeah, I'm excited to see what kind of a season Travis Hunter is going to have. A lot of people feel like Ashton Jeanty is going to be the favorite for offensive rookie of the year. I can see that. I mean, the guy basically had a Saquon Barkley type of season. He really did. That's the type of year it was for him. So we will see. Hey, before we get out of here, I want to talk about this for a moment here because WrestleMania took place over the weekend. A lot of people may not have approved of WrestleMania. WrestleMania has kind of turned into the Super Bowl here, where it's not just the event, which, by the way, WrestleMania is now 2 nights, and they've been doing that for a few years now. WrestleMania is not just the event on a Sunday. It's now a 2-day event, Saturday and Sunday. But it's not just WrestleMania Saturday and WrestleMania Sunday. This has turned into a massive spectacle, kind of like the Super Bowl, where you have the media night Monday night and all of the other media circus and craziness that comes as you get closer and closer to the Super Bowl. I mean, the Super Bowl is a huge deal with the halftime show, which has always been a big deal, but even leading up to it, how much talk that gets. WrestleMania, here's how WrestleMania weekend goes. So they were at Allegiant Stadium. Yes, Allegiant Stadium. The Chiefs winning a Super Bowl and WWE having WrestleMania at Allegiant Stadium all happened before the Raiders could even host a playoff game at Allegiant Stadium. How crazy is that? But anyway, WrestleMania had Friday Night SmackDown that took place at T-Mobile Center. Or T-Mobile Arena, excuse me. And then they had the Hall of Fame event at Fontainebleau, which is on the Vegas Strip. And then they had WrestleMania Saturday, and then WrestleMania Sunday. And then the Raw after Mania, they went back to T-Mobile Arena. And then for NXT, I think they went to Fontainebleau, a smaller venue. And then they also have WWE World, which took place, I think, at the Las Vegas Convention Center, which is not on the Vegas Strip. I know where the convention center is. I've actually been there many times for work, but that's in the area. That's a big part of it. It's basically like a convention. There's some meet and greets happening. There's all these, cool events. It's kind of like a Comic-Con in a way, based off what I've heard and learned. I've just kind of wondered, could Kansas City get in on this? Could Kansas City ever host a WrestleMania? Arash Markazi put out a tweet yesterday talking about why cities are aggressively bidding to try to get WrestleMania to come to their city. Because again, it's not just that one night event, or it's now a 2-night event, plus the entire week is a spectacle. It's like a 7-day, 8-day, 9-day type of deal here. And that's how big of a deal it's really turned into. Now, when you look at Kansas City, and I know there's all this talk about what the Chiefs could do with their stadium, could they renovate? Well, if you renovate, I think you miss out on a lot of big opportunities in the future. But if you get an indoor stadium, and look, I know only Kansas is talking about getting an indoor stadium. Missouri just wants to focus on renovating. But if Missouri were to decide on getting an indoor stadium, let's just say it's somewhere in the Kansas City area. Because all the Vegas events for WrestleMania this weekend, they were not all in one specific small area. I mean, they were all spread out around the Vegas Strip, in and around the Vegas Strip. So if you have WrestleMania weekend in Kansas City, you could have it at Bartle Hall at the Kansas City Convention Center. The Friday Night SmackDown and the Raw after Mania could both be at T-Mobile Center. WrestleMania Saturday and Sunday could be at the new Arrowhead Stadium. The NXT after Mania, you could do it at either Municipal Auditorium, which is not too far from downtown, which is where the T-Mobile Center is, and the Convention Center, or you could maybe go a little bit east to Independence and have it at Cable Dahmer Arena. That would make sense also. You could also utilize P&L, which is right across the street from T-Mobile Center. A lot of people hang out at P&L before or after an event at T-Mobile Center, especially for the Big 12. I mean, man, it is just so fun being at P&L during the Big 12 tournament. And if you've got a ticket, people make their way over, and it's a whole lot of fun there. Now, listen, I know that the Chiefs, if they were to get an indoor stadium, Kansas City specifically, they would not be actively in the rotation for a Super Bowl. But, I still think you would get a Super Bowl every once in a while. You would get a Final Four. You would get a WrestleMania. You would have an opportunity to bring in more concerts and have more events at an indoor venue. I mean, listen, I just feel like Kansas City has grown a lot, especially downtown over the last 15 years, to where they can host a lot of these major events. And what better place to have it in America than the heart of America? I think that is something that they need to consider. DiMaccio on YouTube says, is the T-Mobile Center too small to host WrestleMania? Yeah, they used to have WrestleMania inside like inside arenas. They don't do arenas anymore. They do stadiums. That's been a thing for a while now. In fact, let me just look this up real quickly here. Because I know on the WrestleMania Wikipedia page, it shows you the entire list. So here it is. WrestleMania 42 is going to be in New Orleans at the Caesars Superdome. Which makes sense because they get a lot of big events. Didn't they just have the Final Four recently? I know they had the Super Bowl. Was the Final Four there? I don't know. Not that I care too much about it right now. I can't remember where the Final Four was this year, but anyway, WrestleMania 41 was at Allegiant Stadium. Last year, it was in Philly at Lincoln Financial Field. The year before was at SoFi Stadium. WrestleMania 38 was at AT&T Stadium. They've been there a couple of times. Raymond James Stadium, WWE Performance Center because of the pandemic, MetLife Stadium, Mercedes-Benz Superdome, Camping World Stadium, AT&T Stadium again, Levi Stadium, Mercedes-Benz again, MetLife again, Sun Life, Georgia Dome. Yeah, the last time they did it at an indoor arena was WrestleMania 22. That was in 2006. That was at the Allstate Arena in Chicago. The year before that, it was at the Staples Center, now called the Crypto.com Arena. Madison Square Garden. They did a WrestleMania at Safeco Field, a baseball stadium. I don't think they've done a baseball stadium since then. They've done the Skydome, the Astrodome. Then they did Arrowhead Pond. I don't know. Does Arrowhead Pond still exist? Yeah, it's been renamed to the Honda Center. Yeah, they used to do a lot of smaller venues, arenas before WrestleMania 2000, and they've only done a couple since then. Yeah, they only do them outdoor, not just outdoors, but at bigger venues, stadiums now. So I just kind of wonder with Kansas City and their situation right now with the stadiums. I've told you guys for a long time, I don't care where the Chiefs go, Kansas or Missouri. I want them to do it right. Because if you're going to be spending a lot of money, do it right. They've renovated Arrowhead twice. They've had 2 major renovations. And for people who are like, oh, the atmosphere is created by the fans, not by the venue. It's by the fans. So as long as the Chiefs do it right, I think you could get a WrestleMania. I think you could get a Super Bowl. You might not be an active rotation for those events, and that's fine, but I still think you do it for those one events. And maybe you get them again in 15, 20 years. But I do think it is time for a new stadium for many, many reasons. And let's be honest, for anyone that says football was meant to be played outdoors, those are the same people who did not attend the Chiefs and Dolphins cold game, that cold playoff game a couple of years ago. And I'm not shaming you for it, but don't sit here and tell me football was meant to be played outdoors when you didn't even attend that game. And don't tell me about ticket prices because they were pretty damn cheap that day. They really were. I think, listen, as great as the Chiefs have been, I'd be willing to bet there are probably a few empty seats. Not that the ownership cares about those few seats. But I would be willing to bet there are a few empty seats because of the weather. Just a few. Listen, when you're as good as Kansas City is, you almost every ticket will sell. But I think you'll pack the house even more if you were to have an indoor stadium. Those cold games in November, December, January, and we know the Chiefs play a lot in January nowadays. They'd be more enjoyable, would they not? Listen, me personally, I hate the cold, man. It gets pretty damn cold in Kansas City in January, in December. But I'll tell you now, if the Chiefs were to get an indoor stadium, I can't speak for other people, but I would imagine there are some Chiefs fans like me who would only prefer to attend games in September or October because that's when the weather's nice compared to November and December. But if you have an indoor stadium, wouldn't those people like me who hate the cold be more inclined to want to attend games? I mean, I will say this. I certainly would like to see a retractable roof, because if you have an indoor stadium with no retractable roof, you miss out on the flyover, which is a massive part of the Arrowhead experience. Yeah, it would cost a lot more, but I certainly think that's something that would be worth looking into. That's why I'm saying, if you're going to even spend money on this, don't spend $800 million to renovate Arrowhead. Those renovations were a joke. I'm sorry, they just were. I think what they've got to do is find the right plan, spend the money you need to spend, because a project like this will cost a lot more down the line. Get all those amenities you want to get and hit a home run with this project, because I think you'll get a lot of major events like a WrestleMania. And boy, what a weekend that will be in Kansas City if they could make it happen. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Chief Zone podcast. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this podcast, and for all of you who watched and listened live on Facebook and YouTube. Appreciate you guys as well. Not 100% confirmed yet. I would say 95% confirmed. We have a special guest that is supposed to be on tomorrow, 8 o'clock Central Time. So if you're going to be around, you're near a computer, your phone, your smart TV, however it is you take the podcast live, we do have a very special guest coming on the podcast tomorrow. I will tell you this. He was a fan favorite during his time in Kansas City. So I think you guys would be very excited to hear from him. We're just trying to finalize a couple of things here, but I think it's supposed to happen tomorrow night at 8. I'm hoping I can confirm the name very soon. And when I say very soon, I'm thinking as early as tonight. So stay tuned for an announcement. Hopefully we have a podcast tomorrow night. If we don't talk until the draft, we'll do a short live stream. This will not be a podcast, but we'll do a short live stream before the draft, just kind of chit-chatting right before the draft gets underway. And as soon as Kansas City makes a move in round 1, we will go live and react to Kansas City's first round pick. And if you miss it, we'll have it on the podcast. Red Friday live chat is kind of pending. I'm expecting to do it very early this Friday, so just be aware of that. Obviously, we don't want to interfere with the second and third rounds of the NFL draft. That would not be a very good idea. So that is what you have to look forward to this week for the Chief Zone, the Red Friday live chat, other live streams coming your way this week. It's NFL Draft Week. Yes. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this podcast. And thank you again for those who watch live. I will talk to you all hopefully tomorrow. Take care.